back to the Tin Barn. I'm Pragmatic Lee, and today we got another little project for you. This one's going to be making another tool. Let me swing the camera around here and I'll show you what we're going to be working on. All right, what we're going to try to work on today or get made today is an indicator stand for the surface plate. I've got a height indicator here that I have used by taking the pointer out and mounting the test indicator into that, but it doesn't work all that well. It works good for a height gauge, which is what it's designed for. What we're going to do today, though, is take these two blocks. They're in some more of this old rusty material I've got around here. Good steel in there, just got a layer of paint and rust on them. But we're going to clean these two blocks up, size them together. Then there'll be a little spacer in between them with a flat bar on this end. It'll be screwed into the two sides. On this will be a rod that have an indicator holder on it. And then on the back side we'll have a knob for fine adjustments that will bend this flat plate just a little bit on that to get the final adjustments. So what I'm going to do first is take these old rusty pieces that I've got here, carry them over to the belt grinder and clean them up some, get them to the point where I can at least start milling them and making them to size. And not sure whether I'm going to use the face mill or fly cutter on that to get a good surface. In this project we'll be using the millwright much and we'll use the surface grinder. I don't think there'll be any lathe work on this in this project. So I'm going to take these over to the belt grinder off camera and try to get them cleaned up a little bit. All right, I got the two factory edges cleaned up well enough that I'm comfortable with them mating on the vice jaws here on the mill. And I think instead of getting out the fly cutter or the face mill, I'm just going to use this 11/16 end mill to clean up the ends and clean up the surfaces. Like I say, we're going to surface grind these, not so much to try to get them to a particular size, but just to get them cosmetically looking good. We'll clean up these saw cut edges. Of the two pieces, I think this is probably going to be the smallest one, so we'll size it first and then size the other one to this. All right, that's got this edge, solid edge, cleaned up. I'm going to turn it around, do the same thing to this edge. The two factory edges, clean all those up, and then clean the surfaces with the same end mill here. I'll bring you back when I got this piece done, show you what it looks like, and then work on the next piece. Okay, I got the first piece roughed out now. It comes to 2.209 by 2.9. Thickness I'm not really concerned about as long as it was cleaned up. Again, we're going to surface grind these just to get it a good looking finish. So I'm going to do the same thing to this piece, bring it to the same size as far as length and width. I've got both pieces roughed out now to approximately the same size, but before I lay out where the adjustment screw is going to be and where the holes will be for this end plate that it'll hinge on, I want to come over here to the surface grinder and get them both exactly the same width and length. Again, I'm not concerned about their thickness being the same. I've already dressed the wheel and stoned the chuck, so think we're ready to go now. We're going to get the 4 sides even. It's going to come down until I barely touch. And I have warmed the machine up as well. I'm only advancing the down feed about 2 thousandths at a time until I find the surface. All right, that finally touched off all the way across in all directions. So I'm going to go down a 1/2 thousandths this time. I'm still getting used to this machine, and I was only advancing down 1 thousandths at a time there. I'm sure could have done a whole lot more, but like I say, I'm still just getting used to this. So I've come down a 1/2 thousandths, and this time I'm only going to step over 50 thousandths at a time. And finally, I'm just going to make a spark out pass. All right, I'm going to turn that over, do the same thing to the opposing sides, and then we'll do it to each end. But I think I'm going to increase my stroke length just a little bit over here on the power feed. Give me a little bit more reaction time, or time to react. I've got the blocks turned over now. I've got the stroke lengthened a little over here on the power feed. So I'm gonna, let's see. I'm gonna try 2 thousandths at a time, dropping down this time. All right, now we're going to take our 1/2 thousandths cut, advancing only half as much. And we'll spark out on the way back. All right, now to get these ends here, and to be sure it stands parallel on these sides, I'm not going to trust trying to hold a square up there. What I'm going to do is bring these right to the edge of the vise. I'll just use a parallel there to and that is just barely giving me enough room over here. Now what I'll do is turn the vise on its side, get this in, flatten that up, then we'll turn it to the other side. All right, that's just barely enough room there. We're not going to do a whole lot of cutting on there, just to get these two edges the same. Don't believe I'll need my drip rag this time. All right, let's try 1 thousandths. Now we'll just do our spark out pass again. Now, what we're going to do is line up the edges that we just ground with the edge of the vise. Again, that's leaving me just a little bit of room out this side over here. Alright, I think I got the vise good and tight on there now. Got the pieces lined up, so let's get these last two edges. Just looking any high spots right now. There's one little spot I'm chasing on here. It looks like where I might have dwelled with the end mill just a little bit too long. Alright, that got it that time, so we'll go down to 1/2 thousandths for our finish cut and do the quarter step overs. Alright, that's got all 4 sides done now. All 4 of the edges. I'm going to carry this back over to the workbench and lay out for the feet and for the adjustment, the height or fine adjustment pin. I'm back over here at the mill now, and I've got the pieces standing upright. Excuse me. Got the pieces standing upright in the vise. I've scribed a line on this side at 100 thousandths in, and this side 200 thousandths. And I'm going to mill out a groove 225 thousandths deep right here that the hinge plate will mount in. Now the reason this one is 225 thousandths, this side is going to be the bottom, and there'll be 100 thousandths thick feet on the bottom. You'll see that shortly, but I've got this zeroed out now. Just going to take a very small cut to begin with to find my scribe line on this side. Alright, I'm satisfied with that. And I'm going to zero out the wire right there so I know how to come back to it. Alright, I've got my 2 scribe lines found. All right, we've got the groove in there now, and the reason it's this deep, the hinge piece will be about 100 thousandths thick, well, a little over eighth of an inch, 125 thousandths. But I wanted the head of the screws to be flush with the top of this as well. So I'm going to carry this over and deburr it. Then we're going to come back and cut the feet onto the bottom. All right, on the bottom, got some scribe lines now. Hopefully you can see them. But what I'm going to do on each of the four corners, I'm going to leave a 1/2 inch square that will be the foot. We'll come down 100 thousandths. All right, I'll zero right there. Like I did before, I'll take just a small cut to find my scribe line and set the DRO. Alright, so there's 0 on that side, to 455 on that side. And we'll take 50 thousandths. Alright, I need to add a little coolant. I'll be right back. All right, there's our 4 feet for the bottom. After some deburring, we'll have 4 good feet. Of course, we'll carry this to the grinder for all said and done, and be absolutely certain we got 4 flat edges there. So I'm going to get set up for the top piece. For the couple holes we have to drill in it. All right, I've got the top piece mounted in the mill vise now. And on this end, we're going to put a 1/4 28 for the fine adjust knob. And on this end, it'll be a 3/8 24, which will be the stem that the indicator will mount on. Got the DRO zeroed out so I can easily come back to that location to finish out the 1/4 inch hole. This is of course the 3/8 24 tap. I'll slow way down for that. All I really expect this to do is just get started. Amazing how well a good short tap will cut. All right, let's finish that up with the tap handle. All right, now we can come back to 0 on the DRO and do our 1/4 28 hole. All right, a little deburring on those holes. Then I think we'll be ready to measure and work on our hinge piece. All right, we've got the top and bottom pieces of our indicator holder, again, roughed out. We've got this little hinge piece, which is nothing but a piece of 1/8 inch thick just flat stock, bar stock. Turned out it was 1.1 wide. When I put a 1/8 inch, using an 1/8 inch parallel as a spacer down here. So I'm going to set that in the vise to hold it together on that axis. And then I'm going to use a Kent-Cliff clamp to hold it together on this axis. Get everything lined up. That's what the purpose of this clamp is, to be sure it's lined up good side to side. Now we're going to drill and tap 4 10-24 holes in this to attach the hinge plate. I'm going to drill and tap through both the hinge and the 2 pieces of the body. Once I get that done, I can take the hinge out and drill the clearance hole for that. All right, there's our 4 holes drilled. Now we'll put our 10-24 tap in. I do not expect to be able to power tap very much of this, because that tap is not very sharp. Alright, since we got such a dull tap, I'm just going to use the tap guide and not even try to power tap it. I wanted to be sure all this stayed in place, so that was the reason I was going to tap the hinge plate at the same time. But it wanted to sneak out of there, which is perfectly fine. Everything else stayed in place. Alright, I'm going to continue on and tap all 4 of these holes. And then the next thing we're going to do is carry these 2 pieces over to the surface grinder and put a finish grind on them. All right, these pieces are drilled and tapped now. The hinge piece is in there with an 1/8 inch gap. So I'm going to take this back apart, go over to the surface grinder, and grind these surfaces flat. I'm not going to try to grind them both at the same time. Again, as I've said several times, the thickness of these does not need to be the same. So I'm going to set that up and get both sides of both pieces surface ground. All right, I think we're pretty well done with the base now. We've got the two pieces, got the 4 feet on there, our holes drilled and tapped, and our hinge down here. Now for the standard that the indicator will mount on, I'm using just a piece of 3/8 inch drill rod. That will screw into that hole that we drilled, and of course tighten down with that. Now what we need is something to hold the indicator on, and I've got a little dovetail piece here with my indicator. Just clamps onto the top of it with a dovetail. That is a 5/32 pin. So what we're going to do is, I've got a piece of, this is a 5/8 inch square piece, about, let's see, 1.5 inches long, 1.55 maybe. We're going to drill it for the 3/8. Well, actually, we're going to drill it 23/64 and ream it to 1/1000 over 3/8. And then in the face down here, we're going to drill a 5/32 hole for this to go into. Then we'll come back and put a set screw in this end and in this end. Not actually going to use a set screw, we're going to use a knob with a 1024 bolt on it. So I'm going to set up now to drill these first 2 holes in here, and then we'll of course drill for our knobs. I don't necessarily like to hang material off the edge like this, but that hole is going to be exactly the size of what's in between the parallels, and I don't want to take a chance of damaging the parallels. So I'm going to let it hang out a little bit over here. I think I will drill a lead-in hole for that, even though it's only a 23/64 with it hanging off over there. I don't have to put a lot of pressure on it. Now I'm going to grab my chucking reamer. That's 1/1000 over 3/8. And that should slip very nicely right over our piece of drill rod, which it does. 1/1000 over size. All right, now I'm going to simply set up in this end down here and drill the 5/32. I'll bring you back when we get ready to drill and tap for the set screw. So I've got the standard mounted on there now. Got a drill hole drilled for the slide over that. And in the end, got a little hole for the indicator, as you can see. So what we need is a hole in the side of this, drilled and tapped, and a hole in the back of this, drilled and tapped, for a 1032. I'm just going to use some of these hardware store knobs. I had a couple of them, but that'll go into, one will go in the back, and one will go in the side to hold the indicator tight. So I'll drill and tap these out. Now, since that is such a small hole for landing in there, I'm going to follow this one up with the bottom tap. All right, I'm going to deburr this piece, carry it over to the surface grinder. I won't try to video that, but I'm just going to clean this piece up just like I did the base piece. 1, 2, 3. All right, I think we're ready to call this project completed. We've got our 2 base pieces in. We've got our knob in for the fine adjustment. Again, that's just a hardware store knob on there on a piece of 1/4-28 rod. I did make a mistake building this. I put that tightening screw here on the back here, but that interfered with that knob. So I simply put one in the side, drill and tap one in the side. But of course, I'm sure you're familiar with the way this would work. If you got a piece you want to test on it, that you want to measure, just use this course adjust here, of course, to bring it close by. Let me get you back in frame here. All right, then we're going to pull our piece in. And instead of handling this and trying to twist all that and touching it, we can just use this fine adjust until we pull it up to 0. Then with this setting in place, we can move our workpiece around. And look for any deviations in it. This particular piece of metal is the one I use for testing learning on the surface grinder. And it's within 1/4 thousandths, it looks like, with just experimenting that I've been doing. So I hope this has been enjoyable to you. I feel like this is a tool that I've needed for a long time here in the tin barn. But again, hope you've enjoyed this video, and we'll see you on the next one.